It was good, YouTube. This is Who Is Like God, and welcome back to Your Questions Answered, which is a playlist where I actually answer the questions that y'all send in the live streams and other things, and I try to answer them to the best of my ability. Today, we're answering the question, how do Christians believe that we come from Adam and Eve when the flood happened and it was said that the flood wiped out everybody? The implication is, if everyone was wiped out during the flood and Adam and Eve lived for almost 1,000 years, how could we descend from Adam and Eve and believe we descend from them, because wouldn't they be wiped out by the flood as well? About that question here and now, because it's actually really interesting, is that you could either interpret the ages in Genesis super literally or metaphorically. And either way, it actually works out, because I actually studied Genesis 5 and did the calculations. What we know for sure, so we start to answer this question by talking about what we know for sure. Adam and Eve weren't on the ark. That's because the Bible tells us who was on the ark that Noah built. And it was Noah, his sons, and each of their wives. So if we go to Genesis 5, we can see this. In Genesis 6:18, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. Now, Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Japheth, and Ham. So Noah, his 3 sons, and each of their wives would, at face value, count a total of 8 people. So according to Genesis, there would have been 8 people in the ark. But the New Testament actually confirms this in the book of Peter, because the Apostle Peter sort of looks back on the ark and sees that that parallel, that typology fulfilled in Christ and baptism. The Apostle Peter is talking about the spirits that were in prison, that I'm actually going to make another video about, God willing. But he says in verse 20, talking about the spirits in prison, or the spirits in Tartarus, he says, because they formerly did not obey when God's patience waited in the days of Noah while the ark was being prepared, in which a few, that is 8 persons, were brought safely through the water. So we can find out in the Torah, is confirming the New Testament, that there were 8 people in the ark, which means that Adam and Eve wouldn't have been in the ark. To accept that, we know that there are people from Adam and Eve's descendants, like Seth, who are righteous, who, if it wasn't Adam and Eve, there were other people from that lineage that were righteous before the time of Noah. You see what I'm saying? So there are people that we know that were on the ark that we would have reason to believe would be saved in some way. So if they weren't in the ark and they weren't destroyed in the flood, that means were they passed away before that point? And I think the answer to that is yes. Because when you look at the Bible in the cultural context, I think we have reason to believe that the ages could be symbolic, that the usage of numbers and how Hebrew has this thing called, I believe it's called gematria, where the value of a letter has a numerical value as well. And in the ancient Near Eastern context, as so far as I understand, that's like something they did to convey messages and to convey meaning. So the meaning behind certain ages could be to exalt the character of these people, and to sort of let you know what I'm saying, to that effect, exalt the name of the old prophets and patriarchs. It doesn't necessarily have to be that they lived to be 900, 800 years old. So in that mindset, then Adam and Eve would have passed away before the events of Noah and the ark ever happened, and they would have left their children and their descendants before that point. So the answer to the question is, we believe that we come from Adam and Eve and descend from them, because they would have had descendants before the ark even happened. The ages, even if you take the literal interpretation of the ages, I actually did the math. If you look at the age when each generation had their children from Adam, then by the time that Noah was born and Noah's sons were born, we would have been 1,556 years past the time of Adam, past the time of Adam's generation when he produced children. Because we know Noah went on the ark with his sons, and Noah had his sons when he was 500. So if we use the literal numbers, by the time Noah was around, and by the time Noah had his sons, and they all got married, which happened before they actually got on the ark, 1,500 years already passed since Adam had his children. And that's important, because Adam only lived to be 930 years. All this means is that even if you take a super literal interpretation, we believe that all the old patriarchs in the earliest generations of the Bible actually lived to be nearly 1,000 years old. Even if we take that literally, then by the time Noah and the ark happened, Adam and Eve would have already passed away, leaving their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, all the way to the 10th generation to Noah. You see what I'm saying? So the answer to the question, how can we believe that we descend from Adam and Eve when the flood happens and it wipes everyone away? Well, Adam and Eve would have passed away before that point even happened. They would have passed away and left children and grandchildren before the ark even happened, right? That window between when Adam died and when the ark was built and they refuge in it. But if we also take the figurative understanding, even if we don't take it hyper literally, then either way, they would have passed away before this point happened. Because even in the most literal understanding, Adam and Eve would have passed away before the ark, meaning the descendants would have been around and the descendants would have had children. They would have been passed away before that generation. So even if the most literal understanding, if we go that way or we go figuratively in how we interpret the ages of Genesis 5, either way you want to shake it, the old patriarchs and such would have passed away and left their children before this even happened. So it's not that Adam and Eve were around during the time of the ark and they got wiped away before leaving children. It's not that if Adam and Eve didn't have children, no one would even be there to build the ark in the first place if that generation hadn't already succeeded, regardless of how long they lived. You see what I'm saying? So hopefully this can bring clarity to someone. The next videos, God willing, I'm going to be talking about the fallen angels because that was also a viewer question. And I pray it's very interesting. I pray it could bring clarity and bring intrigue to the things of God. Y'all be blessed in the Most High through the Messiah. And I'll see you all in the next video. All right. Peace.